Hey friends, this is Jennifer Terri and welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll talk about exemptions. Exemptions for entry, for quarantine, and COVID testing. Now, let's start with the entry exemption. So as we know that since March 22 until April 21, the entry of foreign nationals are suspended. Balikbayan program is suspended also for this period. Only very few certain types of visa holders are allowed to enter the Philippines, such as 9C, 9E, 47A2, and those who are traveling for emergency humanitarian reasons or grounds. Now let's start with the entry exemption. Let's say you have an emergency reason, a humanitarian ground, or any analogous cases, reasons to enter the Philippines, and that you really have to enter the Philippines as much as possible. So how do you apply for an exemption to enter the Philippines during this travel suspension period? So this one, we have the Memorandum Circular from the National Task Force. Here is the process. First, you have to fill up a Google form. Here we are at the entry exemption request form. All right. So you'll have to fill up your basic information, your full name, last name, given name, and middle initials, your nationality or your citizenship, your contact number, as well as your address, email address, your country of origin, your date of travel, when do you intend to travel to the Philippines, and then your passport number. Here we have with visa. If you have the visa, then write it there. If you don't have the visa, indicate where will you apply for visa. So for this one, for example, you are in New York, then you would say Philippine Embassy, New York. Then pre-booked hotel accommodation, yes or no. If yes, indicate which hotel. If you don't have, just say no. But then, you're willing to book a hotel as soon as you get your exemption. And then reason for exemption. So here, explain briefly why you are requesting for an exemption and your supporting documents. So you just upload the supporting documents here. After that, just click submit. Now, what are the requirements? What are you going to submit in there? First is a copy of your ID, the page of your passport indicating your full name, your date of birth, and nationality. The next one would be a statement on reason for coming to the Philippines and the requested date of entry, substantiating the same. And lastly would be your statement whether the foreign national has an existing visa and a copy thereof. If without a visa yet, the location of Philippine Foreign Post where the visa application will be lodged. And remember that for all of these, it should be sent in one PDF file. Okay? One PDF file, your statement of explanation why you need to enter the Philippines, and the supporting documents. Failure to comply with the foregoing requirements shall be a ground to disapprove the application exemption. I would suggest submit anything that you think would help strong evidence. Once your requests are vetted by the designated agencies, they shall then endorse your prescribed exemption document to the National Task Force for final approval. In this memo, it says that you have to fill up with a Google form, but there's also an email address for each government agency concerning for different purpose of entry. So I myself, I am confused whether you only have to fill up the Google form or you also have to email the responsible agency for your entry. But if I was in your shoe, I would email both. Now, requests by the foreign national shall be filed directly to the following concerned agencies. The first agency we have is the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, DENR. So here we have their email, ocec@dnr.gov.ph. You email your request here if the purpose of your entry is emergency matters relative to natural resources. Next is the Department of Health. Here is their email, ftduque@doh.gov.ph. For the reason that you are entering the Philippines because of medical and humanitarian concerns and technical assistance to health facilities like hospital, medical centers. Next agency is the Department of Energy. So we have DOE.media at doe.gov.ph. So if your purpose relates to emergency matters critical to energy production, transmission, and distribution. Next is DND. So this one is the Department of National Defense. Have ousdo.tnd@gmail.com if your purpose of entry relates to matters involving national security. Next up, DSWD. I think this is the one most popular for you guys. If your concern is relating to family, here's their email, oasstatutory@tswd.gov.ph. This is if your purpose is relating to family members in distress or other emergency social welfare matters. Next up, we have the DTI, Department of Trade and Industry. So let's say you have a business, you have investment-related matters. Here is their email, cos@dti.gov.ph. And lastly would be OCD. Here's their email, ndrrmoc@ocd.gov.ph. This is if your purpose of travel regards to providing humanitarian assistance relative to disasters other than the pandemic. So different agencies for different purposes. If your application is approved, then the National Task Force will endorse you to the Bureau of Immigration and the Civil Aeronautics Board, and will give you a furnished copy of your exemption endorsing you that you can enter the Philippines. In case where the foreign national doesn't have the visa yet, the National Task Force shall endorse the visa issuance to the Department of Foreign Affairs. Now, this only applies if you really have an emergency humanitarian reason to enter the Philippines. Let's move forward with the quarantine exemption. So for those wondering, is there a quarantine exemption? Can you skip hotel quarantine? Yes, but it's not because, I have vaccines, I have completed vaccinations. Can I skip the hotel quarantine? No, that is not grounds for a quarantine exemption. Quarantine exemption is for people who, let's say, medical reasons. But if you have other reasons that you think would qualify for an exemption, then there's no harm in trying. Now, exemptions are approved in only very limited circumstances. The Department of Health looks at the supporting documentation provided and seek medical assessment. If an exemption is granted, they will give you certification which you will have to present to the Bureau of Quarantine upon arrival at the airport. So depending on your request and their assessment, you could be allowed to quarantine at home or at the hospital. So depending on your circumstances and their assessment. So this one also, if they allow you to quarantine at home, this has to be coordinated with your local government unit. Now, if you are somebody who needs to be transferred directly to the hospital on arrival, then you should apply for this quarantine exemption before you book your travel to the Philippines to organize your transport and other requirements. If you don't secure this quarantine exemption early on, then you'll be sent to a quarantine hotel just like everyone else. Now, what are the requirements for a quarantine exemption? The first one would be a copy of your passport. Next would be a letter of acceptance from barangay. So your barangay, your local government unit should also know that, we have somebody arriving in our area. He or she is exempted from quarantine, so they can keep an eye on you as well. Next is a letter of intent. Explain why do you have to be exempted from quarantine. What is your circumstances? Next up is a medical certificate provided by your healthcare professional, a doctor, explaining as to why this person should be exempted. Your doctor should give you the medical certification. So after you have all the requirements, you can email all these requirements, attach it to covidhotline@doh.gov.ph. After that, call 1555 to verify, have you received my exemption? I have tried to apply and I'm waiting for an answer or a decision on this matter. Follow up is the key. That's how it is in the Philippines, really. Based on experience, if you're dealing with the government, follow up is very important. So have your family or friends in the Philippines call this number 1555. And So that is entry exemption, quarantine exemption. Let's go to COVID testing exemption. Now for this one, I really tried hard, guys, to try to squeeze, is there a COVID testing exemption? Because in some countries, you don't have to be tested if you're under 5, if you're under 2, if you're a baby. But in the Philippines, that is not the case. As per conversation with PadLab and Detoxicare, everyone will be tested. For infants, for less discomfort, they will be tested through their mouth. But everyone will be tested. But this is all for this video, friends. Thank you so much for watching. If you're somebody who will apply, let me know, update me. Okay, quarantine or entry exemption, let me know how you progress. We want to listen to success stories or even failed stories. I'll see you again with another travel update. Bye!